Welcome to the Shergroup podcast, where we share ideas on how to help businesses grow and prosper in the online world. Join host, Chief Shergroup Claire Sambrook as she discusses her digital journey and how Shergroup is helping thousands to keep their business flowing and growing. Here on the Shergroup podcast.
Hello, it's Claire with the Shergroup podcast. So today I wanted to answer a question in quite a long answer about how can we help landlords stop losing money when they need to evict their tenant who's in arrears. There's no doubt that our landlord community is coming under increasing pressure to bear the cost of tenant arrears. And a report in the Daily Telegraph earlier this year showed that the eviction process in the civil courts in England and Wales was 155 times slower than it was in 2019, pre-pandemic. We don't expect by the end of this year, December 2022, that figure has improved. So what's causing this? And why are we encouraging you to transfer your possession order to the High Court for enforcement? Well, according to the same report, landlords are forfeiting tens of thousands of pounds in lost rent as a bailiff shortage and massive court delays grind the eviction process to a halt. That's the Daily Telegraph's words, not ours. You may very well find yourself in this situation if you're hearing this podcast. We already know that from talking to our community of landlords and landlord advisors that wait times for evictions are at record highs. The exodus of good professional landlords from the rental housing market should be a real concern for government, because landlords have driven forward the opportunity for more rental housing space to be available to ordinary people, while the government seems unable to get a cohesive plan in place to build more affordable homes. Worse than this, reports are growing of landlords writing off arrears and paying off tenants to leave properties rather than stick with the legal process to obtain an order for possession and then enforce it where necessary. There is no doubt in our mind that the system is in crisis. And yet, there is a glimmer of hope, certainly coming from Team Shergroup, and that is to find the solution to your dilemma of a tenant who isn't paying you, and to get you out of the tight corner of being in arrears yourself because your revenue stream has dried up. Now, over the last 14 years, we've been helping landlords to transfer their orders of possession to the High Court under a discretion, a little known discretion, given to district judges to allow an order for possession in the county court to be transferred to the High Court for enforcement. In deciding whether to exercise his or her discretion, the district judge must be satisfied there is a real reason for a faster transfer time. And of course, if you as the claimant landlord is in a financial tight spot, that needs to be explained to the district judge. He or she can then look to exercise their discretion in your favour and make an order allowing the transfer of your possession order to be transferred. The upside for you, if an order is granted, is immediate, if we can get the judge on side. There are no delays or backlogs in the High Court system. A notice of eviction will need to be served on your tenant, giving them the statutory 14 days time period to collect their belongings and move out. But after that time has elapsed, we can set a date to fit with your timeline for the eviction to go ahead. No delays, no more paperwork, just a simple countdown to the day of the eviction itself, which we will help you organise to ensure you have everything you need for a peaceful transfer of possession back to you. It's low key, it's discreet, and it's done with the utmost care. So what's the catch, we hear you ask? Well, our response to that is there isn't one, if you follow our process and take our advice. But the status quo on legal advice in this area is lacking. And here's what we think goes wrong for landlords. Landlords, their agents and advisors are encouraged by government information and various other stakeholders to use the possession claims online or PCOL system. This is to recover rent arrears, which certainly streamlines a claim for possession in the civil courts. And it should make it super simple to issue a claim and end up with a possession order. But it's not as fast as it could be due to the delays in the county court system. This is where the system falls down, because it doesn't allow the claimant landlord to add additional information into the claim form itself, asking the court to exercise its discretion under Section 42, subsection 2 of the County Courts Act 1984, so that any eventual order for possession can be transferred to the High Court for enforcement because the district judge has exercised his or her discretion to allow that to happen. So, on this aspect of seeking permission and getting the district judge to make that all-important order, we offer a half-hour legal clinic through our sister company, Shergroup Legal. We charge a fixed fee of £150 plus VAT. Now, a lot of landlords are using this service to shape up their possession claim and make sure they have the right wording. Some of them are not aware of it at all. That's a bit worrying. But a landlord can call us, you can call us, or contact us through chat, email, or messages on social media. There's lots of ways to get hold of Shergroup, probably the same in your own business. And you can book an appointment to speak to our property lawyers about whether all the reasoning necessary to make a request for permission to transfer to the High Court is present in your case. Judges are increasingly aware of these applications and want to see more than the reason, I just want my property back. No, you're going to have to do a little better than that, but we can help you craft a suitably worded request which will give you the best chance of getting the permission, and then you can go forward to a more efficient enforcement process. This means that a landlord can achieve an order for possession, but because the PCOL form doesn't give enough space for the additional application to be made to transfer to the High Court for enforcement, the landlord has to make a separate application, either orally at the final possession hearing or after the possession order has been made. From our own trial data in this area of our solutions that we offer landlords, we know the likelihood of a landlord achieving permission to enforce in the High Court once a possession order has been made drops from something around 80% to 40%. In asking the court at any time to make an order, allowing the enforcement to be transferred to the High Court for enforcement, a landlord needs to explain fully why such an order is needed. So, you may come to us with a possession order that doesn't have the permission, or you may start a claim with us through Shergroup Legal, and we will endeavour to get you the necessary express wording in your order. Either way, delay in enforcement can be measured in real cash terms, and that calculation is put simply this: it's the cost of your lost rent multiplied by the time the bailiff manager of any given court says it will take for the order to be enforced. The longer the period, the more lost opportunity cost for the landlord. Now, let's put some figures around that. The average UK-wide rent is £977 a month, and the average monthly rent in London is now at £2,011. These figures are based on the HomeLet index, which you'll find a link to HomeLet in the show notes. And this keeps tabs on changes on rent values month on month. You can see from these figures, particularly in London, that any delay in the court system is going to add significant and almost unmanageable amounts of arrears to the final amount for enforcement. This aspect of the court delay situation makes it unfair, we say, to tenants as well as to landlords. And tenants have got to dig themselves out of these arrears somehow, because you're going to end up with a CCJ against the tenant for that amount, and that's going to stay with them on their record for 6 years. So tenants are also put at a disadvantage. On top of the problem of the amount of rent accruing, if your tenant is not paying rent, there's also the concern the property is falling into disrepair, and the longer the property is not being looked after, then that means there's a greater outlay for the landlord in getting the property back up to scratch and getting it back on the market so they can get a paying tenant in the property. I mean, all the way round, the delay in getting the tenant back on track with paying their rent or getting a new tenant in has a knock-on effect on the landlord's position. So what's our enforcement strategy? We like to strategize about enforcement. And let's deconstruct how everyone else does it, and let's create a better process for you as part of our landlord community. What we do is we'll ask you to complete our questionnaire on why you need a timely eviction. We tactfully don't use the word speedy because judges don't want to know that it's going to be a speedy process, but timely is probably something they can live with. We have to show that you yourself are in a tight spot financially. So, do any of these situations apply to you? Perhaps you're servicing a mortgage on a property and you need that rental income to pay the mortgage. That's pretty obvious. And that's where many people as landlords will be. You need the property back to liquidate some part of your investment portfolio to bolster your own financial position. Particularly relevant perhaps if you've been made redundant or you're a pensioner and you need that cash. Or you want to redevelop the property to achieve a better return. Perhaps not the most compelling argument for a district judge to award you the opportunity of an earlier eviction date. But moving on from that, if you have evidence of substantial arrears and or antisocial behaviour of the tenant, then that will also sway a district judge's decision making in your favour. Our clear approach is to navigate the legal system for you with the end game in mind, and that is an early eviction and eventually the enforcement of any arrears. We will issue your claim for possession with a careful review of your notice and accompanying legislation so you can confidently navigate the county court system without being limited by PCOL. We will issue the claim in the tenant's home county court, and we will ask in the claim form for the enforcement of any eventual order to be transferred to the High Court for enforcement where it makes sense to do so, i.e. a court which has more than 4 weeks to give you an eviction date because of the amount of rent that I mentioned earlier, the £977 or the £2,011, depending on if you're inside or outside of London. And we will verify this timeline with the bailiff manager at the court concerned. I mean, we want to put you in a position where the facts that you're relying on around the eviction date are verified. Because district judges do ask their bailiff managers if what they are being shown in your application is correct. So we want to make sure that is up-to-date information. We then increase the odds in your favour of satisfying the district judge to make an order in your favour by adding the request under section 42 subsection 2 of the County Courts Act 1984 to allow you to enforce in the High Court and sidestep all the delay which is inherent in the county court system. The good news for our community of landlords is that both in the legal process and in the enforcement process afterwards, these areas can be handled using Shergroup's legal and enforcement capabilities. I myself am a High Court enforcement officer, so I oversee the enforcement process, but I'm also a practicing solicitor and Shergroup Legal is my law firm. So as a result, Shergroup can provide a solution to manage your possession claim to give you the best possible chance of an early eviction and look to recover your arrears using our enforcement strategies. So instead of writing off arrears and paying tenants to vacate properties, we want to put you in a position where you get back your property as soon as your possession order is granted and recover any rent that you've lost. Now, one of the reasons that we're talking about this is because from this Daily Telegraph article, it was talking about a backlog. And that backlog was 155 times slower than it was pre-pandemic. Now, we understand that the world of landlords is sinking in delay and, dare we say it, despair. But take heart. We want you to know this simple truth. There are no backlogs in High Court enforcement. There are enforcement agents like you see on Channel 5's TV show Call the Bailiffs, waiting to enforce your possession order today. Let me repeat that. There are no backlogs in High Court enforcement. In fact, it's been puzzling to us why the county court system has such an enormous backlog when it comes to the enforcement process. And I think in this Daily Telegraph article, which again you can read for yourself from the link in the show notes below, published in February of this year, confirms our worst fears for the landlord community. There is, in short, a huge shortage of county court bailiffs. No one's talking about that. No one's talking about the fact there just aren't enough bailiffs to do the work that is coming through the court system. And according to the Ministry of Justice and its own civil justice statistics, of the 14,433 possession claims that were issued in courts from October to December in 2021, just 17 cases, 17 out of 14,000 odd, led to bailiff evictions in the same quarter. This was at a rate of 0.1%, the lowest on record, and 55 times slower than at the end of 2019. Between October and December 2021, the average time between a landlord repossession claim being issued and the eventual eviction was 68 weeks. This again was another record high, excluding the pandemic period, when the wait time was further extended by the eviction ban. It was also 56% higher than the wait time at the end of 2019 pre-pandemic. The long waits after going through the legal system are due to a shortage of bailiffs. One landlord in northeast London reported in the Daily Telegraph article who had a rogue tenant with arrears of £18,375 in June 2021 was granted an eviction order and applied for a bailiff appointment last July. After a wait of 7 months, he was finally given a bailiff eviction date for the beginning of March 2022. So he went from July 2021 to March 2022 to get his eviction appointment. And in the show notes below, I put a couple of graphs, again from the Daily Telegraph report, just to show you the data in graphic form. But to be honest, you don't need a graph. We hear more and more anecdotal evidence of landlords who suffer from the breakdown in the county court system. A landlord reported in the same Daily Telegraph article suffered from a rogue tenant situation. That tenant had just stopped paying rent. We believe there are hundreds, if not thousands, of landlords suffering from tenants who have just stopped paying. For that landlord, going back to November 2021, that led to arrears of rent of £16,000 being accumulated. It then took a landlord a whole year to get a court hearing. In desperation, he offered to pay his tenants £4,000 a week, £4,000 to leave his property. And once he got an eviction notice in April 2021, he then had a 9-week wait for a bailiff. Over this period alone, he lost a further £1,900 in rental income. Now, if you're a landlord or a landlord's advisor, I don't really need to ask the question, but I'm going to pose it here at this point in the podcast. Does that sound like justice to you? The landlord, cited in the Daily Telegraph article, now plans to sell up and exit the sector altogether. 5 of his 16 properties have already been sold, and he's quoted as saying that he had a horrendous experience of trying to do evictions, which was a huge contributing factor to him exiting the rental market. And we would comment on that and say, this is very sad. Many Brits have built investment portfolios based on the rental market and have used their ingenuity, their knowledge of the financial market, and probably a lot of blood, sweat and tears in remodelling and renovating properties to allow them to be turned into rental properties. And all of that effort is now being basically wasted because they can't move the non-paying tenant out quickly enough to be able to replenish the cash that they themselves are having to pay out. I mean, it's a vicious circle. So what does it cost to use Shergroup enforcement and Shergroup legal as opposed to county court bailiffs? Well, let's look at 2 scenarios and see which one you fall into. Firstly, if you have a possession order and you're looking to get it enforced, but it doesn't have express permission in the wording of the order to allow you to transfer it to the High Court for enforcement, then we can make that application for you. Set out the reasons why you need to transfer the enforcement of your order to the High Court and wait for the District Judge to give permission. The complete cost of this solution is £706.80, inclusive of VAT and court fees. If the District Judge is persuaded to exercise his or her discretion in your favour, you will only recover limited costs, but you will get the permission that you need to be able to enforce in the High Court. And subject to the 14 days needed for the notice of eviction being served, then you'll be on your way with the eviction within a matter of days. On top of that fee, though, you'll also have to pay the cost of the eviction, which is £799 plus VAT, using Shergroup's enforcement solution. The total investment by you to get the permission and to then carry out the eviction will be £1,505.80. The VAT element will be recoverable if you or your business are VAT registered. So what you have to do is weigh up the length of time it's taking to recover possession and the likely eviction date given to you by the court, if at all. Some courts are not even giving eviction dates, to see if this stacks up as a way forward. Remember, the more weeks that go by that you're not being paid rent, the more the lost opportunity for you. Now, the position is simplified if you have a possession order with express permission to transfer to the High Court in the terms of the order. And some landlords do come to us with this already covered off, and solicitors who know their way around landlord and tenant work will come to us with that, as will other providers. And then it's a straight £799 plus VAT to get the eviction done. No further application is needed. Now, so that's the best outcome. Ideally, if you are starting a possession action and you're new to all this in terms of understanding the High Court option for enforcement, then we encourage you to come to us for the complete landlord and tenant service, where you let us help you serve your notice under Section 21 or Section 8, issue your claim with the correct wording, and ask the court for permission to enforce in the High Court as part of our overall approach to your claim. We can offer you a package cost for this entire service, start to finish, which is available by contacting our business solutions advisors at shergroup.com. So reach out to us on any of our channels and start a conversation around this. So that's the cost, which is higher than the county court and the warrant of possession, but you have to weigh that up against the loss of rent while you're waiting. That's really, really important. So is all this delay and loss of revenue fair on landlords? Well, let us be really, really clear. We say absolutely not. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the civil courts are not serving their customers, and they are a national disgrace in terms of not being transparent about these delays and why there are delays. In theory, you should be able to get a bailiff 14 days after you receive a possession order to enforce your order, as soon as that notice of eviction time limit has expired. In reality, before the pandemic, the wait time was 4 to 6 weeks based on Daily Telegraph data. Now this wait period has doubled. We hear county court bailiff managers offering eviction dates of up to 6 months. We heard one the other week that couldn't even give a date. And with just 350 bailiffs across the country, even before the pandemic, the Ministry of Justice acknowledged that there was a shortfall, but we want to emphasise this shortfall is only in the county courts, and the government don't want to talk about High Court enforcement because we're private sector. And I think the government play it all wrong, because we could be a help to government. You have a parallel system of enforcement that is ready and waiting to assist. We're like the Territorial Army. We're just waiting to be called into action. And government, either through Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service or through the Ministry of Justice, just will not swallow their pride and ask for help. How ridiculous is that? What this leads to is that the pace of processing evictions in the courts is glacially slow, despite the fact that the number of claims was still 43% down compared with the end of 2019. But the scale of the problem is increasing very quickly as the backlog created during the pandemic starts hitting the courts deeper and deeper. According to the same Daily Telegraph report which sparked us to blog about this intolerable situation for landlords, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson, no names mentioned, said, "We are reducing backlogs with new measures, such as allowing some defendants to pay bailiffs online, so they can reduce doorstep visits to focus on possession orders." Okay, so you're using bailiff time to allow defendants to pay online on county court judgments so that they can have more time to focus on possession orders. Well, that doesn't work either. I mean, you've either got to put more bailiffs on the street or reach out to your parallel system that you, the Ministry of Justice, you created High Court enforcement officers, you created the taking control of goods regulations and the High Court enforcement officer regulations. So we are regulated by the Lord Chancellor. Why are you not using us? It's a pathetic answer. The answer to the solution to the problem lies in allowing possession orders to be transferred to the High Court and to stop district judges, which is also what we've heard anecdotally, passing secret messages on their internal network boycotting the granting of permission, just to say that we've been told that such a letter exists, but surprise, surprise, no one wants to share it with us. What's that about? I don't like all this cloak and dagger. Come to a meeting. Explain to us what your concerns are as district judges through the District Judges Association about not using High Court enforcement agents to carry out the terms of orders that are made and allowing discretions to be exercised in a timely fashion. This is where we've come to in England and Wales today. Landlords have been encouraged to invest in private rental property to support the lack of housing and now aren't allowed to manage their assets efficiently. It stereotypes landlords into being the Goliath and tenants into being the David. And in fact, it's a far more complex situation than that. Landlords could very well be the David, losing money hand over fist and putting themselves in financial peril. Now more than ever, when they need access to justice, they're being shafted by the very system that should see them receive fair play. So, at the end of this podcast, have you been shafted by the justice system in this arena? Send us a message. Tell us about your experience of trying to get your possession order enforced. How long has it taken? And how much money are you owed? And have you even got a satisfactory outcome? Tell us about the delays in your enforcement process and what you were told by county court staff or by the judge about your eviction situation. And if you are a judge, send us a copy of the communication circulated between fellow judges suggesting that discretion shouldn't be exercised to allow enforcement to be done in the High Court. We'd like to see that. But as we like to be fair-minded and transparent, on a more positive note, did you receive an efficient service from the county court? Did the bailiffs evict your tenant in a reasonable timeline? Did you find the district judge helpful in granting permission? We do track successful outcomes for our clients, and we are building a tracker system which we intend to publish, showing what is happening when it comes to enforcing orders of possession and the judges who are prepared to make orders. All, in summing up, in this podcast, as you can tell, I feel very passionately about this area because I've watched it in the ups and downs since campaigning for this discretion to be used by district judges. I've spoken to officials at the Ministry of Justice in my position as a past president of the High Court Enforcement Officers Association. And I feel let down that whilst government feel unable to change the rules, allowing possession orders to be automatically transferred to the High Court, if that's what the claimant landlord wants to do, it has time to make tons of COVID legislation, regulations, but cannot make this simple change that has been requested time and time again for the best part of 20 years. If it's something that's affected you and you want help, then get in touch with us through Shergroup.com and let's see how we can help you. On our website, you'll find all the ways to connect with us, and a phone call or chat message is a good way to start a conversation. Look, we just want the civil justice system in this country to be working effectively for court users. We don't want to be unfair. We don't think that what we're advocating here is unfair. And it's the responsibility of government and of the judiciary to get hold of this problem and sort it out. Because we can't do that all on our own. But what we can do is we can help. And remember, there is no backlog for enforcement in High Court enforcement. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Sharegroupie podcast. To join our Sharegroupie community, subscribe by going to our website at www.sharegroup.com. Keep up with the latest Sharegroup news across all our main channels, including YouTube, LinkedIn, and across all social media. Stay connected and begin building more business relationships.